Every year, tens of thousands of African students submit applications to colleges and universities worldwide in hopes of gaining admission. However, not everyone who submits an application is accepted. That is due to many factors, including a lack of financing and visa denial. The invasion of Russian forces into Ukraine has highlighted the thousands of African students that were studying in the Eastern European country and their difficulties fleeing the nation. Why are so many African students seeking to study abroad? What are the benefits of seeking higher education outside of the continent? What is the downside? We will discuss this and more coming up on Our Voices. Hello, I'm Amina Aliyu. Welcome to Our Voices. The effects of Russia's invasion into Ukraine is stressful for everyone, but especially for Africans who were studying or working in the country before the war broke out. On March 4th, the first group of more than 400 Nigerians fleeing Ukraine were flown home. The group, most of whom were students, arrived on a chartered flight from Bucharest, Romania. Timothy Obiezu has more from Abuja.
Around 7 a.m. local time in Abuja Friday, an airplane carrying the first batch of Nigerian evacuees from Ukraine touched down the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport from Romania. The evacuees were mostly students, numbering around 500. Officials from the National Emergency Management Agency, Foreign Affairs Ministry and Health Ministry were on ground to receive them, and say later today hundreds more are expected to arrive from Poland and Hungary.
Some of them had no passports because they left in a hurry. And so we had to create emergency certificates for all of them. So immigration will do its processes this morning, and then we will have them documented.
Many of the evacuees are happy to be back home and safe, but say it was an exhausting experience and that they had left so much behind.
I happened to experience being on the bus ride for 24 hours trying to get to the border. And the scariest part about that is not knowing what's on the way, because you don't know which city has been attacked, and you're just going and praying and hoping that you drive through to safety.
Getting caught up in the war zone is crazy. You know, myself, all of my friends that you're looking at here, 4 of us, we've had to walk on foot alone. We've had to walk, say almost 30 kilometers on foot alone, you understand? And having done that, we still couldn't get into where we're going, you understand? That was Poland border.
Nigerian authorities are looking to evacuate up to 8,000 people, including 5,000 students, in the coming days. But it is not exactly clear how many Nigerians have safely crossed Ukraine's borders and identified with Nigerian embassies in neighboring countries. Authorities did admit last week, though, that it's been difficult coordinating nationals spread across many Ukrainian cities where hundreds of thousands are trying to scramble to safety as the chaos raged on. And today, authorities expressed serious concerns over some 300 Nigerian students still trapped in Sumy, a northeastern Ukrainian city. The city has been severely affected by bombings, making it practically impossible to evacuate the students at this time.
Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs has spoken with the UN and the International Office on Migration, and the safe corridor that both countries agreed to create yesterday was a fallout of this talk.
The violence between Russia and Ukraine escalated late February with a massive invasion of Ukraine by Russian troops. There have been conflicting reports on casualties, but Ukrainian officials say thousands of people, including civilians, have been killed. Hundreds of thousands others have also been displaced from their homes. African students from Nigeria, Egypt, and Morocco account for nearly 20% of Ukraine's international students base. But many of the students for now say they're confused about what to do next. Will they return to school anytime soon? No one has the answers to that question just yet. Timothy Obiezu for VOA News, Abuja, Nigeria.
Thanks, Timothy. I had the opportunity recently to speak to Geoffrey Gideofo Onyema, Nigeria's foreign minister, to discuss the government's plan on the evacuation of its nationals, mostly students from Ukraine.
After the invasion, which of course took us all by surprise. It now became a question of getting them safely to the neighboring countries. So that proved to be quite a challenge because in many cases the distances, were quite long. Then we also had to work on how to organize them once they had crossed the border. And of course, they were going to different countries, Romania to Poland and Hungary. Officials of the embassies were asked to go to the border points to help in receiving them and taking them to finding accommodation for them and arranging for their stay in those three countries. Now, it wasn't easy at all by any stretch of the imagination. Those who were able to make their way to the border did so. All that mattered to us was getting our people out.
Are there still Nigerians in neighboring countries since we don't know how far the conflict is going to spread?
Yes. In fact, yes, a significant number because, we had estimated about over 5,000 Nigerian students, when the crisis broke out. We've evacuated, back to Nigeria, airlifted about 1,500 or thereabouts. So, there are another 3,500 or 4,000 Nigerians. And we know for a fact that even amongst those that were being looked after by the embassies, that quite a large number of them did not get on the plane to come back to Nigeria.
I imagine it was quite difficult to trace down the students or track down the students and that were not registered with the embassy. What campaigns has the government been doing or what awareness has the government been trying to spread to get people that do travel abroad to register with the embassy because of things like this?
Yeah, they were all given contact numbers. They were all told what to do and how long they had, because some of these are transit countries. I mean, some of them, they say that, they had only 5 days in which to stay in the country. So we made all that clear to them. Some of those countries like Romania had indicated an interest in providing continuing education possibilities and facilities for the students. So we told them what to do and how we were going about that process of integrating them into universities and other educational institutions in those neighboring countries.
Do you have any message for Nigerian students out there?
Yes. The message is this. We all have to build our country together. And so it's good and we're supportive of them gaining education and skills from around the world. But we're also very hopeful that they will also come back to help in building our country. Yes, it's a brain drain in a sense, but we also want the brain gain for them to also come back and help us in nation building. So that's my message to all the students out there.
It's time for a break. When we return, VOA's Mary Mugawe spoke to 2 African medical students who fled Ukraine and are now staying with a family in Poland. We'll be right back.
Empowerment and humanity towards a better world.
Economic and social progress of every society.
Facts and information from key players rather than spectators in politics, business, science and technology.
City, rural, educated, or underprivileged. We care and we listen to what matters to you.
Your voices are our voices.
Welcome back. You're watching Our Voices. The effects of Russia's invasion into Ukraine is stressful for everyone, but especially for Africans who were studying or working in the country before the war broke out. Many have fled to neighboring countries, including Poland, to seek safety and shelter. VOA's Mary Mugawe spoke to 2 African medical students who fled Ukraine and are now staying with a family in Poland.
Immigrants who fled the war in Ukraine and end up in Poland include foreign nationals from African countries. Among them, Angela Alex, a Tanzanian who was a second-year medical student at Kiev Medical University. She met with the Nigerian citizen, a first-year student at Taras Shevchenko National University in Ukraine, on their way to Poland. Their journey was not easy. She recalls how her life was in Ukraine before the war.
As she said, it felt like home. Like there was not much difference other than the language and other barriers, but it was just normal.
Angela said she never imagined that one day her life would change and she would find herself a Ukrainian refugee living in Poland. After Russia invaded Ukraine, she was worried and she realized she had to leave.
When I first heard the bombs, it was, I think it was on 4 a.m. as everybody says it. It was 4 a.m. and when you hear the bombs, it was hard to believe, like, oh, this is actually happening, because I thought probably it was fireworks or something like that, or as people celebrating. But so when we started seeing, as the days went by, we started seeing smoke in different areas, transportations were being closed, and we're like, okay, this is serious.
Goodness Ifabumuyi from Nigeria also decided to leave Kiev as soon as she received reports of an invasion.
There were times where we hear this loud sound and everything, and the bed will shake a little, but we just felt, no, it's far, but like this day I woke up and I could see smoke from afar. That was when I knew that, okay, this thing is actually coming. And unfortunately, the airports were closed. But at some point, I just said I had to go. So I just packed like my basic bag and I was like, I have to leave. So that's what I did.
The lives of these two girls changed drastically after they found themselves in Poland in the city of Siedlce. They are now staying with Polish couple. Goodness relates what she witnessed at the Ukraine-Poland border and how she met their hosts.
I think when I got to the border, I don't know, I put a call through to my embassy, but I wasn't able to get, a definite arrangement from them. So there's this man, a volunteer, introduced us to a particular woman. It was through her that we were able to connect to this Good Samaritans.
Angela and Goodness, they say they have started new life, but they don't see any immediate hope of returning to Ukraine, even though they're still studying online. They say their future plan is not to return to Africa until they complete their transfer and continue their studies at the college in other European countries. Mary Mgawe, VOA in Poland.
For more insight, VOA Swahili reporter Mary Magawe joins us from Poland. Hello, Mary. At the beginning of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, African students say that they were encountering difficulties leaving the country. Some students say that they were racially profiled. What is the current situation with African students leaving Ukraine?
We are here at the border of Madika, Ukraine and Poland. And as you can see, there are so many refugees who are coming. They're coming by waves. Since we arrived, we haven't seen any African from Ukraine today. And according to the people that we spoke to, they are saying they don't see a lot of Africans in Ukraine who are trying to cross the border to come here. And this is because many of them have left. When Russia arrived in Ukraine, there were so many students from Africa and other people from Africa. They were trying to ride the buses and the train, trying to escape the war. And once they arrive in those countries, they get 15 days, they got registered, and they leave. Some of them we spoke to, they're saying they didn't feel that they got attention like Ukraine and the way they got it. And this is because of the rules that they were set right there. Like to get into the buses or train, they started with women and children first. So even if you are from Africa and you are a woman, you could not go in, and they did not understand why. So that part itself, it felt like they were excluded. And also they say some of the government like Nigerian, Tanzania, Mozambique, they arranged the tickets and transportation for their people to stay here for a few days and go back to their countries. So that they did not have to wait for a long time in Poland. But then when they arrive at the border of Poland, on the border of Poland, they say they got a lot of attention, and the situation was very different because there was some people who are waiting over there for them to receive them and take them to different places from their government, from their embassies, individual people, and really they received anything they wanted, like from food, clothes, hot water, hot soup, and all of that. So they were pleased. People of Poland, they helped them, and they think that it wasn't difficult as it was in Ukraine. They had to wait for a long time to get here.
We had an opportunity to hear from other African students about their experience in fleeing Ukraine in our Your Voice segment. Let's watch.
So that morning around 5 a.m., I read the news and we hear that bombs have landed in Kharkiv and Kyiv. And at that moment, that's when we all realized that, okay, maybe we have to get out, but it was too late. Within 2 hours, it was a no-fly zone. Not only was it Kharkiv and Kyiv that was attacked, but other cities, Odessa, Sumy, Dnipro. And so it was only a matter of time before it was our city. It was difficult. And that's when we realized that we actually have to go. So I think after 4 days, 90% of the students in my school decided to head west to Lviv, where we could cross one of the borders to another country to be safer. The journey was 24 hours by train, if you could get on the train. It was kind of a fight. You know, many people were struggling to get on, and many people were aggressive, many people were violent. But once you were on, you were okay for 24 hours. It was crammed. It was like an escape train, really. And from there, we were supposed to go to Poland. But at that moment, I think it was the very beginning of people crossing borders, or maybe the first few days. And it was very crowded at the Polish border. So we decided to go towards Hungary, which required us to take another train for 6 hours and then a bus for 20 hours. And eventually we made it to Hungary. It was a 4-day journey from my city, Zaporizhia, to Hungary. It was sad, but at the end we survived. A lot of us left everything in Ukraine. A lot of us left everything in Ukraine, and a lot of us had a difficult journey. But I know many people who went through so much more. I mean, I think I had a relatively okay journey compared to other people. Other people had a lot.
It's time for another break. But first, why do you think students from Africa choose to study abroad rather than seek out institutes of higher education on the continent? Share your views on our social media platforms. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Our handle is at VOA Our Voices. We're also on WhatsApp. Our number is on your screen. Do you know what is required to study in the United States? After the break, my Our Voices colleagues join me to talk with a global admission coordinator from Education USA. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching Our Voices. For decades, US colleges and universities have attracted large numbers of foreign students to American classrooms while adding billions to the US economy. However, that may be changing. VOA's Kathleen Struck and Bronwyn Benito look at the factors prompting a growing number of international students to look elsewhere.
Shrishti Sinha knows exactly why she chose to come to college in the U.S.
The freedom that you get here in terms of choosing what you want to study, and also the opportunities that studying here gives you. We have prime ministers and presidents come and speak at Columbia during the World Leaders Forum. You get to attend talks with Nobel laureates.
More than 1 million international university students study in the United States today. But is enthusiasm for an American education waning?
We've seen in the last 2 years shifts in where students want to go.
Some foreign students balk at the price of a U.S. college or university, which averages between $25,000 a year at state schools and as much as $70,000 a year at private universities. And cost isn't the only hurdle. Obtaining a U.S. student visa can also be a challenge.
I met a lot of parents who wanted to send their kids earlier, but were like, oh no, with the visa situation, the climate against immigrants and whatnot. We are unsure, and that was a huge factor in them deciding against it.
I think the number one struggle with this visa situation is not having stability, security.
That uncertainty is heightened by America's often harsh political debate over immigration, as well as U.S. policies targeting travelers from certain countries.
The appearance of being unwelcome, the strong anti-immigrant rhetoric that unfortunately is dominating our political environment, those sorts of sentiments can be misread internationally as negative feelings towards international students and scholars.
Meanwhile, violence in the U.S., including mass shootings at American schools and crimes against foreigners, are trumpeted in headlines around the globe. The end result is a leveling off of international student enrollment in the U.S. According to the annual survey by the Institute for International Education, the U.S. is still the number one choice for foreign students. But countries like Canada, Australia, and New Zealand are gaining popularity.
We know that international students also have more choices than ever before about where to pursue higher education.
Despite the hefty price tag and other factors that make the U.S. less attractive, the draw for international students remains strong.
Being here opened the doors of the world to me. Opportunity changes everything.
U.S. universities that depend on foreign student revenue hope that sense of opportunity endures. Bronwyn Benito, VOA News, Washington.
Joining us now to discuss the enrollment of international students to U.S. institutions of higher education is Diane Wise-Young. She serves as the Regional Educational Advising Coordinator for Education USA, based in Accra, Ghana.
We just saw the video, Diane. Although the U.S. is the top destination for international students to study abroad, we see that potential students are not choosing United States as the first choice and applying to universities in Canada, Germany, the United Kingdom, and we see Ukraine. Why is that?
Thanks very much. It's a pleasure to be here. The primary reason is cost. It's very expensive to study in the United States. Now, we are very pleased to have over 39,000 students from all over sub-Saharan Africa studying in the United States, and we're convinced that number can grow. But we rely on colleges and universities in the US to provide partial or full scholarships to help our students.
Now, Ms. Young, what about the different requirements for potential students? We hear that there have been some changes in policies. Could you tell us what might be some new things that have been added or subtracted from the policy?
Sure. The policies that international students are adjusting to are very similar to the ones for domestic students, the biggest one being that many schools are becoming test optional. So that SAT or ACT that many of us took as undergraduates is not required. And it was a trend that was developing before COVID, but during COVID, when it was impossible to take those tests, schools realized they could evaluate students without them. And they've been quite successful, and it's a trend we see continuing. At the graduate level, that less so. At the graduate level, most schools still want to see that GRE exam, although not all of them. So as it has always been, the best predictor of university success at any level is success as an undergraduate or as a secondary student. And I think we're seeing that now.
Okay, so tell us more on how you help international students come and study in the US. Like what organizations do you work with, and how do you help them or assist them, with cost? You mentioned cost earlier. So how do you help international students to come and study in the US?
Thanks, that's a great question. So the Education USA Network helps students all around the world, and we're a State Department network of advising centers. And in sub-Saharan Africa, many of our centers are inside US embassies. And so we work hard to publicize our services, which are free of charge, and we promote ourselves as the official source. And we focus on offering comprehensive and current information for students. In Sub-Saharan Africa specifically, we have 54 different centers, and we work hard to publicize our services. We have advisors in all of our centers who we work to train and get them ready to advise students. And in doing so, they may do that by visiting schools or universities. They used to make lots of presentations, and they're starting to return to that as COVID is lessening. So we're thrilled to see that happening. There are so many great success stories of students who have applied and gone to the United States to study and then come home or stayed on for a graduate degree before they come home.
Okay, related to the cost, are there enough resources available, and are they accessible?
So they're available, and there are a good group of schools that provide full scholarships, including airfare back and forth to the US and back home. We work hard to provide students with the information they need to do their research. We know that there are dozens and dozens of schools who do provide full scholarships, and we work a lot with colleges and universities to encourage them to diversify their student population, and that includes enrolling students from Sub-Saharan Africa.
Now, as we're talking about a lot of students coming to the United States and other parts of the world for education, having lived in Sub-Saharan Africa yourself, and what you've seen, what are the comparatives, and how do you find the trends going forward in terms of students from Africa seeking international education versus them staying in the locations where they are?
So that's a great question. One of the things that we're seeing a lot right now is that many students are not able to study in their home country simply because there isn't space. There just are not enough seats in universities in Ghana, Nigeria, Kenya. And so very qualified students are not able to go to university at home. We also are seeing a trend with more students studying at home if they're able to get one of those spots, and then coming to the United States for graduate school because they're looking for a much more specialized major that may not be offered in their home country. And so those are two really encouraging trends among African students. If all things were equal and the cost of attending a US school was not so high, the US would be flooded with students from Sub-Saharan Africa because they know of the great quality, the great experiences that they'll have in the United States.
That's all for this week's show. On behalf of my Our Voices colleagues, Oriane, Ndimiaki, and Siminesh, and everyone at the Voice of America, I'm Amina Aliyu. Until next time, stay safe.